Additionally, Johnson doesn't fail to provide his reader with this historical background of English as a language and of its present energetic use. Now, when I mention present energetic use, I mean to highlight the fact that Johnson was trying to, he was trying to record, he was trying to put into words, into written words, the usage, the meanings, the definitions, and usages of words in vogue, words not in vogue, etc., etc. So for him, it was a very modern. Of course, it was a very scholarly task, but also more than that, it was a very it was a culturally charged task, right? We all know about cultural studies. We all know the kind of practical impact that discipline has on any literary form, of course. Now, similarly, for Dr. Johnson, it was not only about the books or just about Shakespeare or just about Milton. It was about the fact that he wanted to record usages of words that were in vogue, that were in fashion in his contemporary times. He also wanted to record the meanings and definitions of words which were, you know, long, which have been long used or which are not in use anymore, but he wanted to put it all down into one great piece of literary work. But in order to do so, I mean, of course, he couldn't have done it by not taking it personally. So for him, it was not just a professional deal. It was not just a task that he was up to. For him, he dedicated 7 to 8 years of his life to this task. That meant that, when he got all into it, he got all into it. So before actually starting with the dictionary, he also presents us with a historical background of English as a language. Where does this language come from? What are all its roots? Where do the words and the syntax of the grammar find its roots? Then, of course, he follows that trail from the ancient era to the present era to the contemporary era, that is the 1700s in England. And then he also, then talks about the energetic usage of English in the present scenario. Now, what do you mean by energetic? By energetic, he meant that English is a language that if you try to put it in a box or in a frame, if you try to put a boundary outside of it, you will not be able to do it, because it is a language that is constantly changing. It is constantly evolving. With every day, every year, a new word comes into vogue, and an old word just goes out of the vogue, right? So putting a boundary around English language would be practically impossible. That is the conclusion he came up with. And I'm going to elaborate a little more on that towards the end of the video. But let me also tell you that grammar is also not left out in this task. Hence, if you have to remember all the important highlights of the dictionary that was created by Dr. Samuel Johnson, you have to remember that he's not only talking about the definitions and their usages, but he has also talked about the history of English language. He's talking about the fashions and vogues in the contemporary usage of this energetic language that is English. And he also talks about how the grammar of the English works, and he's also put into consideration, he's also given definitions for all of these grammatical terminologies. Hence, it is not only brilliant in its practical aspects but also scholarly luster. So this book is not only, I think it's a wholesome package of everything. There is everything about the contemporary English society and everything about the classical English literary era, everything about the classical English writers, the usages of the words, these perfect definitions, the scholarly charm of this work, and of course the practical use of it, for which it was initially begin. So that's sort of pretty much, it covers up the major highlights of this dictionary. But I also want to talk about some other important elements that you must know of as students of literature. And like I said in the beginning, if you're really passionate about literature, then guys, you must really know about this. So it's funny to know that if, Johnson didn't find a quotation good enough to serve his best purpose. So of course he would take quotations from Shakespeare or Pope or Milton. So if he didn't find a quotation good enough, good enough serving his purpose, then he would oftenly twist or turn or edit or cut or do something with the quotation in order to put it into his own frame, as per his own convenience. How is that possible for a man looking like that. We've just talked about it. And also, he's a neoclassical man. He follows the neoclassical agenda of John Dryden and Alexander Pope. And then there was him, the great master of the neoclassical age. As far as the neoclassical age is concerned, I have taken some classes on it in my previous classes on an academy. But then I'm also going to take up. I can also take up a new class on it if you really want to study some bit about it. Guys, when I talk about neoclassical sensibility, I talk about rules. I talk about meters and poetic dictions, and I talk about taking the classical writers as your gods and using them in their true worth, not changing them a bit. Okay, so of course the shift in his neoclassical sensibility is a bit odd to note, but like I mentioned before, he did seem like a very strict and stern man, but in heart he was a humorous soul. So maybe I think that deviation, it can be well accounted for. The shift was also in the fact that the apparent unruly energy of the English language he deemed unfit to be put under any strict rules. Of course, like I just mentioned, that he called the English language very energetic in its present use. But of course, for a person with neoclassical sensibilities, calling a language ever changing or ever evolving, now, of course, that also seems like a deviation from his general nature. So I'm trying to bring focus to these deviations in his nature that he very successfully brought out in his dictionary, which highlighted a very different aspect of his personality. But nevertheless, he is a very very classical figure of the neoclassical era in English literature, and nobody can take that from him. Hence, but like coming back to the topic, hence he once quoted that he only wanted to record the language of the day and not form it. So, when in his dictionary, he does mention the fact that, when I tried, I mean, that's what he's saying. He's quoting that when I try to put it in a box, when I try to create a frame, a boundary around it, I was not able to do it because English is a very energetic language. It is a spontaneous language. It changes with the hour, it changes with the fashion. Hence, putting it into a box or maybe trying to form it in some way would not be possible for me. However, recording it for the future generations to read and know and learn, that is the only task that I'm taking in hand right now. So that's all with the highlights, guys. I want to end this video with a brief, overview of the criticism that this dictionary received. Now, of course, it would not be very difficult to judge that one of the biggest criticisms that this dictionary had was that it was too lengthy and too tedious. Now, of course, the dictionary was very well structured. The whole dynamic, the whole structure, the whole placement of each word and each definition and each quotation, it was very well done. It was a work of brilliant craftsmanship. However, we cannot take light away from the fact that it was indeed a very tedious, lengthy, complex book, and it was heavy, it was huge, and it was very practical, but at the same time very difficult. If I have to use very simple words for it, of course, it was too scholarly. Dr. Samuel Johnson was a scholarly man, and maybe he made that error in judgment while devising certain definitions or meanings when he used very typical literary references. Now, of course, not everybody understands literary references. I mean, if I tell you a joke about Shakespeare or Dryden, so only you can understand it because you belong to the literary world. However, not everybody belongs to the literary world, so for them it becomes a bit of a task. Also, two other very important criticisms that this dictionary had was that first, it was politically inclined. Dr. Samuel Johnson, his political inclinations were towards the right wing politics. So some people also say that his dictionary has some bit of a tint of that as well. And some also held that he held his own personal prejudices in writing this dictionary. For example, when he had to now you can look at this statement as either personally prejudiced or as very humorous. to its core. So that's your personal interpretation. So when he had to define the word oat, the grain, okay, he said it's a grain which in England is generally given to horses, but in Scotland supports the people. I mean, I find it humorous, but of course, I'm not sure how the Scots found it to be, you know. So of course their sensibilities might have gotten hurt or something. So of course that came, hence, you know, the dictionary came into negative light because it did offend some people back in the day. But again, like I said, you cannot take credit away from the fact that this dictionary was a brilliant work of literary craftsmanship. It was a brilliantly written book. It was a brilliantly crafted art, and it was one of its kind in the day, only to be replaced by Webster's and Oxford's in the later day, of course. Noah Webster came up with the Merriam-Webster dictionary for the he wrote it in he was an American, so he wrote it for the American English, and that came around 70 to 80 years after Johnson's dictionary, which was again, even Webster's dictionary was a great success. And then later on, of course, we all know about the Oxford Dictionary, the famous Oxford Dictionary. So, but if you have to actually pinpoint a starting, from where it all began, I think calling Dr. Samuel Johnson's dictionary that head of the fountain would not be a wrong statement to make. And with that, I would like to end the class of today. I hope you all liked it. I'm Aishwarya Puri signing off. If you really liked my video, then please do hit the like button and subscribe, because I'm going to update my page with interesting and really engaging videos on English literature daily and regularly. See you next time. Bye bye.